Hi everybody, how are you this week? Good feedback on some of the vlogs I've been doing and you guys hanging out with me in the kitchen. I love it. And I love seeing all your Facebook messages on our private group called Into the Kitchen. So it's really quite epic. So everyone's making all the beautiful sweets and yummy food from all the cooking classes online. And oh my gosh, some of the photos and some of the textures that you guys are doing at home from the online cooking classes are just, actually they're nearly better than mine, let's be honest. They're actually really good. Today I want to talk about sweeteners, and I want to really look at how you guys at home, when you're following my online cooking class, Celebrate Your Sweet Tooth Naturally, of why I've chosen different sweeteners for different recipes. And this is a big one, because when I look around and I look at cafes and I look at major chains like Starbucks and Gloria Jean's and all the ones we know of, right? I always think of, like, I want to have carrot cake and I want chocolate cake and I want pancakes and I want ice cream, and I always think about what's in it and how they make it, and do I have time to make it? And this is one of the greatest things about what I do, is a lot of my stuff on the online cooking classes in Celebrate Your Sweet Tooth Naturally are freezer friendly. So that just, for me as a working woman, you know, and as a lover and as a woman in my own right that's busy, that's hanging out with friends or whatever I'm doing, just like you guys at home, we get to make these sweets with good sweeteners that are freezer friendly. It's like huge moment in my career to be able to do that and put them in the freezer. So back to sweeteners. So in the Celebrate Your Sweet Tooth Naturally online cooking classes, you have coconut sugar, an array of dried fruit, you have honey and maple syrup. They're the sweeteners that I choose to muck around with. Now, one of the big questions that's coming up for me in our group, so when you purchase the online cooking classes, right, you get access to me to talk to, which is kind of really cool. And one of the questions I got asked with one of the cakes was, oh, Cynthia, I don't have, what was it? What didn't she have? She didn't have honey, but she had coconut sugar. And this particular cake actually really did require honey. But what I said to her, do you have maple syrup? And she said, yes. So I said, look, swap your sweeteners around. Don't follow the actual cup measurement of the sweetness for that cake. You've got to operate differently when you're changing sweeteners. So I told her to add the coconut sugar and a splash of maple. And what that did was, that just added a depth of flavor. I know it's kind of weird swapping sweeteners, but I learnt this in LA when I did a course. So one of the things I love to teach is adding some honey and maple together in a dish, or adding coconut sugar and honey together in a dish, or adding dried fruit and coconut sugar in a dish, okay, which is really kind of cool. You're nodding your head at the back there filming this. You can nod the camera like, you know, you know what I'm talking about. So to celebrate your sweet tooth naturally, go to your normal cookbooks that you love cooking out of, that you've cooked for years. This is what I do. I've got cookbooks up here that I've been using for years, that I've taken some gorgeous sweets that beautiful chefs have made, and I've taken the white processed sugar out and added a raw Rapadura sugar, right, which is really super freaking cool. And a raw Rapadura sugar is equivalent to one of those processed sugars in flavor. Now, raw Rapadura sugar is, it's actually really cool when I think about it. They press sugar cane, they press it to make a juice, and then they dehydrate that sugar cane. And that's equivalent to that really white powdered processed sugar. Does this make sense? I hope this is making sense. So I would change that equally, not a problem at all, equally. Now, when I'm dealing with stuff like what I make with raw desserts and baked desserts, I'm going to use coconut sugar or honey or maple syrup. And following that guideline on those recipes is just like, oh, I'm salivating thinking about it. It works perfectly. And combining different sweeteners together gives you some layers of flavor and depth of flavor. It's kind of weird. Adding honey and maple together, it's really weird, but something happens when you're doing it. So, blah, 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 blah. Back to the cakes and the caramel slices and all the divineness that I've got going on in this cooking class. Easy sugars, accessible, honey is accessible, Beautiful raw honey is accessible. Coconut sugar is accessible in major supermarkets these days, which is really cool. Rapadura is how do you say that word again? Accessible in supermarkets as well these days. Maple syrup is very accessible in supermarkets these days. And dried fruit. Now what you want to do with dried fruit, and this is really, really, really important, have a look over here. My dried fruit I get is not sulfured, which means it doesn't have sulfur on it, so it's quite dry, and it doesn't have oil on it, so it's not shiny. So I want to show you the difference between fruit that's been oiled. Have a look at this. See how that's kind of shiny? It's got sunflower oil in it, and this one here has no oil on it, so it's really, really important that you get that. And then have a look at this. And these have sunflower oil on it. Isn't that interesting? So no oil, no sulfur, sunflower oil, and no sulfur. Cool, hey? So dried fruit, when you look for it in supermarkets, look for dried fruit that does not have sunflower oil on it and that has no sulfur on it, because sulfur is one of the biggest triggers to asthma. Really important for kids with asthma. And another thing I love to use as a sweetener is this. So all I do is cut some bananas up. Check this out, Scott. I cut some bananas up.
Have a close inspection.
I lay them on a dehydrating sheet like this, and I sprinkle coconut sugar on them, and I dust them with cinnamon. And they become a banana lolly. And this is brilliant in a cake base. So when my cakes in my cooking classes, Celebrate Your Sweet Tooth Naturally, asks for dry fruit, and I always say to people, if you don't have currants or if you don't have dates, what do you have? You can use this stuff. You can use anything to make the bases out of these cakes, and this is one way to add some really good quality sweeteners into your life, right? And another thing I use a lot of, where are they? This kitchen's amazing, is dates. And there's two types of dates. I like using the dried ones because I have access to them really easily. These are the dried dates. Or you can use medjool dates. It's up to you. Okay, easy, easy. So it's up to you what you want to use, but I love them. They're just beautiful. Really, really yummy, and they're dried and hard. So sweeteners, celebrate your sweet tooth naturally. Come into the kitchen with me, have a play, see what you think, mix your sweeteners up. If you are baking from regular cookbooks and it requires sugar, use Rapadura sugar. If you are cooking with raw foods with me in the kitchen in our online cooking classes, we're going to muck around with different types of dried fruit, different types of honeys, different types of maple syrup, and different types of coconut sugar, and it'll just show you how accessible these things are and how actually really affordable they are too. Okay, I'll see you next week. Goodbye. This is like chewy goodness. Yummy.